Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Pickin' and Puttin'. Actually, it's the springtime premiere for 2023. Liberty Bill, they're in the Liberty Bill studios, and I'm in the corporate Pickin' and Puttin' studios flying over the Field of Dreams. So, how you doing, Billy?
I wish I was in Dyersville, Iowa right now, flying over that beautiful
Oh,
field.
yeah.
But
Yeah. I forgot Iowa. That's where it is. Yeah. Well, you got any shout outs you want to do to anybody?
yeah, actually, Caitlin Clark, the guard at Iowa, who's leading the
Oh,
Hawkeyes here into the Sweet 16 after some disappointing men's basketball runs recently. She's a nice bright spot out there. So shout
oh,
out to her. She brings swagger, she brings TV ratings. She looks like she's having a lot of fun. Sports are supposed to be fun. And shout out to Caitlin Clark.
hey, she's a player too. My God. I mean, she's got her jump shot looks just like anybody's. It's
It's
great.
smooth. It's Steph
Oh
Curry
yeah,
is like.
yeah, she's really good. Well, I had two. One was to Shohan Otani,
Oh,
man, and
yes.
we'll get into that, but that and Mike Trout. That was absolutely fantastic. And also to Ricky Fowler, because I'm rooting for him in the match play thing in Austin, Texas, because if he can get to the final, I think he's got to get out of 64, he's got to get to the final eight, and then he get in the Masters. I
Oh,
think,
that's compelling.
yeah, yeah, that's a good story. So, I'm rooting for him for that. I'll throw out my trivia question this week for you guys, and then we'll come back to it. This is for you too, Bill, but don't answer him right now. And this is crazy. I love this one. What are the 10 top 10 most viewed sports in the entire world?
Hmm.
Top 10. Think about that one. Vegetate on it, and we'll come back at the end of the podcast and give you the top 10 list, kind of like David Letterman. Well,
Is it like annual events or like one-time things?
no, it's worldwide, annually. I mean, now you're cheating. You're looking them up. You're Googling. I know how you're doing, baby. Okay, so I was going to talk about a song for today, and what else would I talk about? I think we may have done this before, but I couldn't help myself. It was "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and what's interesting about this was it was written in 1908 by three men. The original song was written by a guy named Edward Meeker, and then the composer was Jack Norworth, and the lyrics were done by Albert von Titzel.
Hmm,
And
that's a
none of
name.
these none of these guys had ever been to a baseball game, and the first time they actually went to one was 32 years and 20 years later for two of the guys. So they didn't go to them till, hell, I don't know how old they were by then, but and it was sung by Nora Bayes, who was Norworth's wife, the composer. And interestingly enough, it was first played at a high school game in Los Angeles in 1934, and then at the fourth game of the 1934 World Series, of which I don't know who the heck was in it. I should have looked that up.
1934.
Yeah. Um, and these guys were famous. The husband wife team also wrote a song called Shine on Harvest Moon, which you never heard of, but I did. Shine on Harvest Moon up in the sky. There you go. That's it. I'm done.
I, I don't know that one, but I can tell you the Cardinals beat the Tigers in 7 games in the
Oh, okay.
1934 World Series with Dizzy Dean.
Dizzy Dean. And I think the seventh inning stretch was sung in 34 by either Bob Euchre or Harry Carey. I'm not sure which. No, I'm kidding.
I was doing the math.
Yeah, yeah, you're doing the math. Well, they could have been around that long. It was voted one of the top 365 songs of the 20th century, which I believe because it's sung every summer, all summer, many places. So that was it. That's our song of the day. And I just wanted to bring that out. I thought that was kind of fun history, but and everybody knows that one. Well, Bill and I decided what we wanted to talk about, and kind of the topic that we came up with, that I thought was kind of interesting is there's been a lot of talk about the World Baseball uh, Championship, kind of like the Olympics of golf, or of baseball, excuse me. And then the LIV Golf Tour, which is, driven a lot of talk and angst in the last, 18 months, and specifically in the United States.
And change to the PGA Tour, I would say.
Oh, well, we can start there. I mean, there was
Yeah,
a
why are they getting rid of the match play?
I don't know that. Well, because what they've done is they've the players aren't in love with it. It's only 64 players, and they've elevated these events to where they took the purses, and for example, the Wells Fargo in Charlotte now goes to 20 million, so the winner gets 3.8 or something. So it's 20% of the total prize goes to the first place guy. So I think there just wasn't enough places on the map for some of these tournaments. It's like the Valspar last week. They have a hard time getting people to attend. They just have too many places they can go for the money, I guess.
Yep.
But what was interesting is I watched the LIV Golf, and I go back and forth, and it's actually it was on the CW channel. It's actually more fun to watch than the regular tour because you have some recognizable names. And what I tell people, and we'll get into this, is that what makes it unique, everybody says, well, in the US, it's just, well, first of all, and then I'll let you chirp in too. Baseball and golf have both fought in the last, let's say, decade, being stodgy and slow.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so anybody under 35 goes, this is boring, or else why would baseball be putting in the pitch clock? And so what these do is they both of these events, and like I said, we'll get into more detail, but the LIV Golf, they do a tower on the left side where they list all the players. They go off in a shotgun, which means everybody's on the course at the same time. So they all finish at the same time. So you see everybody playing. You don't have to wait for their starting time. And the way they keep the scores and who's first down through the 48th guy is like F1 racing. And in Formula One racing, and in Asia and Australia and New Zealand and that part of the world, they just eat it up. They love the team concept. They love the colors. They love the merchandise. And it appeals, and it's a Top Golf product is the way I describe it. In fact, Top Golf ought to be a sponsor of LIV Golf.
And there's music, right? And they're having fun, and they're allowed to show emotion, and they're mic'd up, and
They can wear
all those
shorts,
things.
all those things. Yeah, they play music constantly throughout. It's up on the 18th, and then they put them on the podium like at the Olympics at the end, the top three, just like they do with the Formula One racing, and they throw champagne and all that. And then they usually at each event will have somebody like, the Rolling Stones in concert for 2 hours after the event. So, I mean, I think the concept and the idea to appeal to young people is a good one. I don't, and it's obviously changed the PGA Tour. I mean,
When I really noticed that, I was watching a little bit of the waste management and how they've, excuse me, fully embraced 16 and leaned into it, and had Amanda Balionis broadcasting from it. And like historically, I feel like they would avoid showing people throwing beer, and this year they're like asking for it. I mean, they've done a complete 180 on that. Not to mention, you mentioned the players' pools being higher, the incentives around social media. They've clearly made a lot of the changes that the LIV Golf folks were asking for.
Yeah, well, and all that came because of Phil Mickelson, and everybody crucified him at the time, saying that this was all backed by Saudi Arabian money, which it is, but yet the LPGA and the DP Tour, which are the European Tour, play all over that part of the world. And
they absolutely do, including China. If you want to rank the current enemies.
So who are you kidding about that? The part of the money part of it, but
well, his tactics weren't great. Phil went about it in a very immature manner. but his overall talking points and critiques have pretty much come to fruition. So there's some
Well, and there were,
validity there.
yeah, and there were questions about his financial needs for, at 50 years old to get a big paycheck to cover some apparently, background history that he'd had. But, that being said, I think it's huge in how it appeals to 35. And that kind of trolls us into the same idea, or trolls us, whatever, segues us into the World Baseball Classic. Because, everybody was arguing, well, especially the American. Here are two things about this. Here's a game that was developed in the United States. Abner Doubleday, and I got a little history about him in a little while, but and it's exploded in the rest of the world, all through South America, Central America, the Caribbean, Japan. They love baseball. So we're all sitting over here going, the game's too slow. We're trying to speed the game up. It's boring. Why would we do that? And last night just ignited for baseball. It was the greatest thing that ever happened for Major League Baseball, because who could have scripted that ending? I mean, the two
night before, the Japan-Mexico game, when Randy Arozarena robbed 2 home runs and then stood there just like showing no emotion, just kind of with swagger, and then was signing autographs in between innings, or when the pitchers were warming up. It's to your point earlier, it's sports, it's supposed to be fun. And the fans, the Latin American fans, and even the Asian fans, the Japanese fans, they treat it like it's a soccer game. Why don't we do that here?
Oh, I don't know.
Why do we sit there in silence and, it's baseball, you gotta take it. No, it's supposed to be fun, make some noise. And I really noticed that when we went to the MLS game here in Charlotte. The difference in the atmosphere for that soccer game versus a Panthers game. First of all, the music for the Panthers game is heavy metal songs from 50 years ago that I've heard 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Whereas the soccer, it's just a different vibe. It felt like a party. And absolutely, for golf and baseball, they've just been way too resistant to change. They've done whatever their television partners have asked them to do, and it just takes too long. There's not enough action. And the pitch clock helps that, but it's the atmosphere and the celebration. And in golf, Tiger kind of started this. Show more emotion. Enjoy
Tiger.
The game.
That was on 16 at the Waste Management when he made the hole-in-one before all this. So the other thing I was going to say, the other one you brought up too, there was the USA Cuba game, because there was they allowed the political signage, and there was, there was a lot of emotion. And in fact, the catcher, I think, has come over to the dark side and come to the U.S., the Cuban catcher. I can't.
Oh, they all have to. And they all come over here, not traditional means. They get on some boat and try to make it over here. And it's, whoop, whoop.
But
it was very cool that we allowed all these people to play for their countries, like Lars Nootbaar, who's not even Japanese, but has some relatives over there. He went and played for Japan, and they all went and visited the country that they're playing in. So like Mike Piazza, former catcher in the big leagues, he was leading the Italian team. They all went over to Italy, and some of them had never been over there. Their ancestors are from there. And so what? And they played a baseball game. They all went back to the country and they played a baseball game. So it's really spreading the love of baseball throughout the world, which Major League Baseball has finally realized is good for their branding. Stop being so selfish. The next thing is they need to let their damn pitchers pitch in the WBC. Well, every other country had their pitchers. We got to save them for the MLB. There's 162 games. You got plenty of time.
Well, there was a couple points I wanted to make there. That's a good one about the pitchers. Get back to that. But the other one was on the Cuba USA game. Now, I don't know where the numbers was that I heard, but I heard that it was the most viewed baseball game in the history of the world, and its numbers exploded over Super Bowls and everything else. I mean, it was
worldwide. That's true. Domestically, the numbers greatly exceeded anyone's expectations. I mean, I think it was like 27 million. I don't know if we have the numbers from last night's game yet, but across the world, yeah, like Puerto Rico, when Puerto Rico played Cuba or Venezuela, something like 2/3 of the households in that country were watching it. More than
Watching it.
half of the
Yeah.
Japanese households were watching it. It's a huge deal. And I think they need to change the timing of it
Well,
because this is spring training. The guys aren't really ramped up. And for me, I'm not going to watch this over March Madness. So I didn't watch as much of it as I wanted to because a lot of it was on during March Madness. I want to see them, we've talked about this before, shorten the season by 40 games and do it in July. Do it like the World Cup. Take a couple of weeks off every couple of years and have a World Baseball Classic in July when baseball is everything.
well, I think there's 2 points there. One, the pitchers. They held the pitchers for the reasons you said. And I was listening earlier to PTI, those guys talking, and the point made was that last night was so emotionally charged. It was like the 1980 ice hockey Olympic team.
Oh, yeah,
And
it was.
and the key was the United States lost. So now you've got this, national fervor, and the
That's a
guys
good
are
point.
going to want to play, and they're going to say, look, next time it comes back, I'm playing, you
And
know?
Trout's a big deal. Trout was the first guy he didn't play before, and he was
Yeah.
the first guy to agree to play for this team. Shout out to him. That's a
Well,
big deal that he was even there.
and I understand the idea that, there were two guys for sure. That one kid tore his tendon in his knee celebrating. It reminded me of Ted Ginn for Ohio State in the end zone on the opening kickoff, celebrating, broke his leg or whatever, ankle. But, you felt just awful for him. And then the other guy gets hit and breaks his thumb or whatever. But, that's, I,
Injuries happen. I'd rather have
but,
that happen at the World Baseball Classic than at a nightclub, you know?
but look, the example to go back to is look what happened to the NBA. You can go back to Bird and Magic, but then what happened to basketball after the Dream Team worldwide? Look at the
That's a good
NBA
point.
now. I mean,
And that's what did it. That was the catalyst.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
look
And it
around
was
the league.
Michael Jordan.
You got German and French guys and African guys. I mean, you got guys from all over the world playing the NBA, and
Yep.
it's because of that. And baseball has that with the Caribbean, but I just think it's
No, it's undertapped. Like Mexico. Actually, I saw a guy. I was at swim lessons with my son earlier, and there was a guy I didn't notice until I was walking out. Otherwise, I would have talked to him. He was wearing a Mexico World
great.
Baseball Classic hat, and that's a team that has a ton of potential because they've just never invested in it. They have kind of a sketchy government down there, but now they are investing in it. They had a good run, and there's just boundless opportunities, and baseball needs it. They need more diversity. We need more Black people, frankly, from this country.
Well, well, think about it though. The promotion of the sports that mothers are coming down on their kids playing football, and football has
Yeah.
the issue with that. But baseball is a sport that's right up there with soccer. I mean, in terms of, I remember when I was a kid, I was tiny until I graduated from high school. I was always a little guy. And my dad always pushed me to try to play baseball because you can be 5'4" and fast and play second base in baseball, but you can't ever play guard in basketball, and you can't play guard in football. Now you can play soccer and you can play baseball, and so I think it's great. Baseball, you're right. Major League Baseball should embrace everything about you have to go back and go for you're an old fart in terms of fans now. Upper
Yeah, I should
30
not be
to
the
40.
target.
Yeah, the target needs to be the under 30s and for those sports under 20, because I mean, look at the kids, under 15. How many kids do you know, unless the dads like you loves baseball, are playing baseball? They're not. They play t-ball and then they disappear. They go on to soccer.
Well, I mean, I think they stay on through middle
Well,
school.
there's some, but
But I mean, participation in baseball is down simply because it was the only option for so long, and now you can play everything.
Right.
So
Well, I think in golf they've been working on it for about a decade. I maybe even longer than that, 15 years or more, but with first tee.
yep.
So where they have to underprivileged and they have equipment and you can donate your old clubs and golf clubs last forever, balls, all that kind of stuff. So it's a wonderful way to get kids out and it's outdoors and it teaches them there's a lot of good stuff that you can do with that too. But that being said, tennis and golf are viewed as, rich people sports and that kind of thing. And that's where I think Top Golf is just bowling on grass.
Did you see they made a Top Golf concept for baseball?
I have not seen that. That
I
would be
don't think
awesome.
it's not built yet,
Is it
but
from that company?
the name of the company is it's called Home Run Dugout. Oh, it's opening in Katy, Texas. Nolan Ryan is a strategic investor. It's going to have, for me, the most appealing part is a beer garden, mini field for wiffle ball. So,
Do they
yeah,
do well? I wonder how the concept is they're going to have. They can't have pitching machines. They can't take anything that risks you getting hit in the head with a ball or anything. They'd have to
oh,
have.
they do unlike the other. They have batting bays, virtual batting bays, and all that. But
Yeah,
yeah, beer garden. I'm guessing it's
wiffle
a
ball.
wiffle ball, a plastic bat, and I always played wiffle ball with a beer once I turned 18. So
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Well, I think, well, and here was the other thing that you had brought up to me. It made a point about the pitch clock and how it was working out and how it's going to affect. And you're right to some extent. In golf, you laugh and everybody says they're on the clock, but it's like in a technical foul in the NBA when the guy gets 50 million a year and they say we're going to charge you $10,000. Oh, thanks, fine. And they give the guy the finger.
no, the money doesn't matter in
Money
baseball.
doesn't
They're
matter.
enforcing it by strikes and balls, and
Well,
that does matter.
and it's similar.
Besides games.
It's similar in golf. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you what the fines is. Nobody knows. It's
Well, if
all
you did strokes, I bet they'd care.
well. But that's the way you'd have to do it because otherwise, the background and stuff in golf is kind of like it's run by somebody from North Korea. Nobody knows what the heck what the penalty.
No, that's actually a fair critique of the tour. They need to be more transparent.
Transparent. I mean, they're not transparent in that regard. So they do need to be more transparent. But
Now,
whatever.
the pitch clock is a huge deal. It can't be overstated. These games are 2.5 hours long. These spring training games are shorter than these NCAA tournament games with all these reviews and commercials and
Oh, well,
CBS paying their sponsors.
I heard him. This was an interesting point. So they asked Izzo the other day. They said, "Well, what about the your players getting tired when you do all this and this and that?" And he said, "Have you ever watched one of these games? These TV timeouts last about 5 minutes. We get plenty of rest in one game.
The halftime's longer too. The halftime's 5 minutes longer too. That's hilarious. He said that. He's not supposed to say that. He's at a point where he doesn't care.
He was a great guy. Well, it's like I said to I put it out on the internet. I said, if you want to have a great team in today's college basketball, because the landscape's changed forever. There are no blue bloods in this tournament right now. I hadn't seen that in 25 years, but there's two things you have to have. You have to have the greatest of point guards, like the girl from Iowa. You got to have a great point guard, or the girl from South Carolina is another one, or that kid from Kansas State. He was awesome.
Yeah, that little guy's awesome. Yeah.
Puts the ball behind his back and then shoots, dead eye free throws. And you got to have a coach who has it's okay to be calm and collected, but you got to have a little bit of the way I described it of Izzo.
Yeah, and adaptability. Izzo wasn't afraid. Like if a guy's been his best scorer all year, but it's not his night, Izzo benches him. That's Purdue's problem. That coach does not adapt to the tournament. He runs his stuff. He has the same players out there. He doesn't make changes. And that's where you run into problems. Whereas Izzo, he doesn't care. He has no egos on that team. Whatever he needs to do to win that game that night, he does.
Yeah, well, that was a transition for North Carolina because Hubert Davis does not, the style of basketball that Dean Smith and Roy Williams, and they played for 50 years, was to have a fast point guard like Ty Lawson. There are a million of them, Phil Ford, go back, that just runs the ball up the court. And then you had a big man, you throw it into him and he dishes it out and they shoot. And you got to have the great point guard and yeah, you got to be able to adapt. And I don't know, the NIL is fascinating because it's gonna take the mid-level schools, just like we're seeing this year. Don't be surprised if Princeton wins another couple games because they've got upperclassmen. Now they don't. The problem is sooner or later the talent does come to with the Houstons and stuff, but. My God, I watched them and they beat, I forget their second game, they beat by 15 points.
Missouri, Missouri is a good team.
They dominated. They were good.
Speaking of NIL, I gotta wonder, Armando Bacot didn't want to play in the NIT, but he wants to come back and get some more NIL. What's up with that?
Well, there's two things I think with Armando Bacot. One is, they had 4 guys enter the portal because, they sat on the bench at North Carolina, and I don't know what he's making, but it's probably a good 7 figures, and he can be a solid, kind of backup kind of NBA player because of his size and his rebounding skills, but he's got to develop some kind of 10-foot, 12-foot shot. He doesn't have that, and if it doesn't translate to the NBA, there are a lot of guys like that. So he's coming back, and I think that's fine. He'll be, think about it. He'll come back and he'll make, now that he did come back for North Carolina, he'll probably make more NIL money because half these guys, all these kids that they recruited that were sitting on the bench are leaving. And if you were these kids nowadays, if you don't play, I'll go where I can play.
Oh, yeah, especially when the team doesn't make the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
If they would have won the national, I'll wait around if we're winning a national championship. I'll wait for that. But
yeah. Well, and I think you watch, it's just like I said, there's 2 things about NIL, and we'll back up the trucks, but I will go to my grave right now and say, you watch Colorado in football this year.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to say they're going to win 10 games, but they've sucked forever in the last 15 years, and they will win 6 to 8 games.
And look at their circumstances. USC and UCLA are leaving.
Yeah.
They could become the big dog in that conference.
Overnight. I think they'll all get sucked up and it'll be the Big Ten west of Mississippi. But here's the other one. The other one to watch, because it's already going to happen. You watch the NIL as soon as the tournament ends. St. John's will be stacked.
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of strippers.
Yeah, but they'll be stacked. All those kids are going to want to come to play there because he's going to bring them back to the Garden. You watch that.
That'll be cool.
Yeah, he will
and
bring.
Then here locally, I think Charlotte just won the CBI tournament. So shout out to them. They won that just tonight. And they're making the move up to the American Athletic Conference next year. They're going to be going up against Memphis.
Well, they want to grow, so they got to do that, So, and yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Patino wants to be a big hit. If his first game, he should come out wearing one of those ugly Louis Carnesecca sweaters.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Actually,
they were some ugly sweaters, but he won. I can think back to Mullen or whatever. Well, okay, I got a little bit more history before we go. So this is interesting history. So Abner Doubleday, who invented baseball, okay, think about this. He was a major general in the Civil War, okay, and he was born in June 26, 1819. They first played baseball that he invented in 1839 in Cooperstown, obviously. But he was famous in the Civil War. He fired the very first shot at Fort Sumter.
I think I heard that before, actually.
Yeah, I never heard that. I thought
that was a crazy factoid.
Isn't that crazy? And then the other one here is so my quote for this episode is from Tommy Lasorda, and you may have heard this one before, but he says there's 3 types of baseball players: those who make it happen, those who watch it happen, and those who wonder what happened. You gotta love Tommy Lasorda.
I was definitely the latter in that case.
Watch what happened. Okay, so back to our trivia question. Okay, the top 10 sports worldwide viewed last year. Bill, can you tell me what they are?
World Cup.
Well, name the sport.
Oh.
I don't mean it's not necessarily an event, the sport, like.
Oh, that's hard. I mean,
well, no, what's number 1? You know that.
Soccer?
Yes. You got to think outside the box. I'm telling you, it's crazy.
Cricket?
Yep. Cricket's number 2. Good job.
Yeah. Cricket's, you go up in North Charlotte, UNCC.
Yeah, they play cricket.
We go up there to hike on the trails. There's legit like cricket games, like teams with 12 people each.
Yeah,
like
and they play on Sunday afternoons. Yeah,
the wives and the kids are there having a
picnic.
Like it's a big deal. So we got cricket number 2.
Yeah, cricket.
I guess I'm thinking actually basketball or hockey.
Basketball, yes. Hockey, field hockey.
Field hockey.
Field hockey. Basketball, and no baseball, no golf, no football. Obviously, that's American anyways. The other ones are tennis. Here's one. Table tennis.
Okay, the Asians love table tennis.
Yeah, Asians love table. Well,
Forrest Gump. Remember Forrest Gump doing the table tennis?
One of the biggest countries in the world, India's cricket, and New Zealand, and Australia, and all that.
I always forget about New Zealand and Australia.
Yeah, and then volleyball.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty international sport. That's
and,
an Olympic sport.
And this one, which I just saw this weekend on television, and it was the Irish against England, and they had 88,000 people watching it. Can you pick it out?
Rugby.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are mean sons of guns. It was, I watched a little bit of it and I go, I mean, there's blood everywhere. The guy, he's wiping off his head and going back in. It was crazy. So anyways, well, you got anything else you want to mention or talk about, Billy, or we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, that Shohei Ohtani, just to close. So that at bat against Mike, what he did in the World Baseball Classic. First of all, Shohei Ohtani is the most talented baseball player of all time.
Oh, he's a unicorn. Like they said, he's a unicorn.
I'm not going to get into like the greatest of all time because he hasn't been over here, but he is clearly the most talented. Like Babe Ruth was only playing against white guys. Like it's just not comparable. Shohei Ohtani in the World Baseball Classic had the hardest hit ball in terms of exit velocity off his bat. He ran 30 miles an hour in terms of his sprint speed, and he threw the ball 102 miles an hour. But the most impressive was that last pitch he threw was a 3-2 slider. Do you know how wide home plate is?
I forget.
17 inches.
Yeah. That last pitch was.
Do you know how much horizontal movement Shohei Ohtani's slider had that last pitch last night?
Oh, it was unbelievable.
17 inches. It moved the entire width of the plate, and it dropped vertically 32 inches. That's almost 3 feet of drop, and it moved the entire plate.
It was 87 miles an hour, too. The other ones were 100 miles an hour. He just threw it right by him.
Off his bat, it's coming off 114 miles an hour. And when he runs, it's 30 miles an hour. He's the best.
Yeah, he was great.
Well, and he's a free agent. Come to Chicago.
Well, that it'll be interesting because he is a free agent. I'll be fascinated.
$600 million. That's for 10 years, $600 million, and he gets an opt out every year to go renegotiate
wherever he wants. Well, I was going to say, just throwing out one more, the only 2 athletes and you're right, the only 2 athletes that come to mind for me, well, you can go back to Jim Thorpe was probably that kind of athlete.
Yeah.
100 years ago, but, or Jesse Owens or something. But The two
Yep.
greatest of the last 50 years would be Bo Jackson and Primetime.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the only two sport, I mean, Bo Jackson, if he hadn't gotten hurt, he was phenomenal. And of course, Primetime was, Primetime. So,
And actually, a biography about Bo Jackson just came out that's supposed to be really good.
yeah, well, I'll have to get that. It was really
I got to
cool.
give you my Mike Leach book that I read. That is an incredible book. R.I.P. and shout out to Mike Leach. If you haven't read that book, folks, that is a great autobiography.
Arr! All I can think of is the pirate, and he was an everyday guy down in Key West. Apparently, he was yeah. You had to. Oh man, his press conferences were to die for. Golly, I just loved Mike. They'd ask him stupid stuff, and he would just go off like the professor. He was wonderful. Yeah,
and he's actually similar to the World Baseball Classic and the LIV. He's a disruptor. He came into football and was like, "Why are you guys running every play? What are you doing?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he's great fun. He's great fun. Well, I really enjoyed it, Billy. Look forward. We'll do it again. We got to have some topics that we like to talk about, but we had a good time talking to you folks about this. I think both the World Baseball and LIV Golf are great for people under 35. And if you think they're crazy because of injuries or air money, I don't care what you think. I think they promote both sports, and they're good for the sport. Whatever.
Shake it up, shake things up.
Shake it up. We'll see y'all next time on the next episode of Picking and Putting. Doc Z here, Libertyville in the studio. See you, everybody. Bye. Oh, catch us on all the platforms, and YouTube and wherever. We're on all of them. We love you. Mean it. Bye.